You're listening to the 4-Phase Cycle Podcast with your hosts, Dr. Alex and Megan of ZESTY Ginger. If you're looking to naturally balance hormones and learn how to work with your body instead of against it, you've definitely come to the right place. As a duo of an integrative MD and a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner and best friends, we use the 4 phases of the female cycle in combination with functional lab work and mindset practices to transform the lives of the women we work with.
We also have a whole lot of fun along the way. If you're new around here, it's best to start with season 1 before jumping around and plan to roll up your sleeves. Showing up for ourselves and enjoying our lives is what good health is all about. Just a quick reminder though, this information is not intended to diagnose, manage, or treat disease. Always consult with your doctor before making changes.
Hello, Alex here for day 3 of our Flowing With Your Cycle podcast series. All right, so you know the drill. ZestyGinger.com/flow is the companion guide. So that allows you to follow along on the days and will help turn what I'm talking about each day into even more concrete, real life, tangible things for you that then can help guide your decision making and your actions and all of that good stuff that is the ultimate goal of all of this. So day 3, we're still in phase 1, and now we have had 2 days of doing some really important setup work. So day 1, we got quiet and we began to utilize our brain and what it's doing at this part of the cycle to assess where we're at. What's cool about doing this cycle after cycle is that at first, there's a lot to assess, but because it happens month after month after month-ish, then you start to chunk it down, because at first, there may be a lot of things that you're like, oh, I didn't even kind of notice that was happening in my life. And yes, it can be a little overwhelming. What's cool though is that once you do it consistently, then that feeling tends to not even come up, because yes, things can rapidly change at times, but for the most part, month after month, we start to get a little more granular and start to see, yes, this is the long-term trajectory. And I actually love keeping that kind of stuff if I'm doing the writing. Now, granted, I can't always read my own handwriting, I guess MD life, but I like seeing it because month by month I can go back and be like, wow, I really changed a lot in a couple of cycles. And so it's super cool. Then in day 2, we started saying, how can we more consciously be aware of how our body is constantly communicating with us, right? And reading our own physical symptoms and signals, but also then getting even more granular on the scale of, what am I feeling? What is actually going on internally? What sense am I getting about things? Does this even jive with me, or have I outlived this, or have I not outgrown it, but today is just not a good day for it, right? All of that stuff is really, really handy. Now then we get to day 3, where again the brain is still interconnected. It's still really geared towards that planning stuff, but today we're going to go a little bit more specific. And so with the companion guide, you're actually going to have very clear, you're going to get to very clear steps on what that actually looks like. But essentially, we're going to be planning and charting a rough draft course for the rest of this cycle, right? So this is not saying I'm going to be set in stone on what I'm going to do, but it is with the insight that you've had and your ability to really hone into what you internally are guiding yourself towards. Now we start to make this concrete. So what we're going to focus on today is what is most important to set up so that you're leading yourselves towards success in whatever way it means to you. So it's a whole lot easier to make positive changes and take action and kind of guide things in the right direction when you don't have the pressure of like, I have to figure out forever, which is why doing it cycle after cycle is such a great way to break things down into more bite-sized pieces for ourselves, right? So when we focus on what is the plan for this cycle given everything that I know about myself now and have the insight about, where is it that I'm going? And generally speaking, it's like a GPS, because this happens naturally. This isn't going to be something that you have to like artificially do, but generally speaking, when we know point A and we start to concretize point B, we can start to get glimmers of steps along the way. Now, this is different when we have a really big plan, right? If you're like, I'm in a 9-to-5 job and I want a successful business, sure, it's a harder thing to figure out the GPS and the directions to there, which, you know, we're pretty upfront about that. That's why we work with our mentors like James Wedmore and Jim Fortin and stuff to do that kind of thing. So no question there. But when it's a month and you're like, well, in a month, really my goal is to get from here to here, when it's much more bite-sized, most of us can start to get some ideas, and that's why I call it a rough draft, of what it would look like to start moving this along. The point here, though, is that we're not just trying to throw things on a paper and run off to do them, right? That's why day 2 was all about really feeling into how your body communicates with you about things, because what the focus is actually not on, how do I make myself a to-do list, but what are the most high yield things that I can do that move the needle forward. And the goal is not to be busy. I mean, if we're busy, then we're busy, that's fine, but that's not the goal. This isn't how do I make the most amount of stuff for myself and run as fast as I can towards that. It's a really great way to burn out. That's how Megan and I already tested that. Check. We can tell you it works really great for burnout. And this is different. This is from where I am to where I want to be in a fairly short period of time. What's going to give me the most bang for your bucks, right? This is this is where it gets really a little bit more, how do I want to say this? This is a little bit harder for people to do, us included, than throwing down a bunch of stuff on the page. I can really relate to this because I used to be like, oh my gosh, I have a really long to-do list, and then I was just kind of like get through it, and then I'd feel good about myself because I was like quote unquote productive. But I'd say 80 to 90% of the stuff wasn't actually doing anything. So that kind of thing definitely got old and, burny outy after a while. It's more challenging to sit and really think about what you think will move the needle forward. A lot of us find that conceptually more difficult because that requires some trust towards yourself and understanding of who you are. And you'll notice that day 1 in the companion guide, you did that kind of work. And so with that in mind, then it really becomes helpful to have the basis for it, so that as you sit down and say, what is going to not just keep me busy, but yield the results that I want, that's where it really becomes powerful. Because month by month, then we're not having laundry lists, we're having small but very insightful, powerful next steps. And it's amazing the difference in how it feels. And Megan and I share openly about our stuff because we want people to know that, is that as we have done this work, we actually put in less time for things, which allows us time for things like, meditation and being with our loved ones, and things actually ground us and connect us into why we do this. And then that it does two things. One, we're doing the actual activities that make a difference, so things keep moving forward. And two, because it allows us the time and the openness to then connect to why we do it, that's kind of burnout prevention or unhappiness prevention, because then you're really honed in to the bigger picture of what's happening into your life. Okay, so in the companion guide, you'll see that there are very specific questions that you're going to follow that will help guide you on this path. But either way, what the most important thing here for day 3 is to think through, if I had to choose just a couple things that I think are the most impactful, what would they be? And what would, if I was drawing, let's say, if you have a kid or you have a kid in your life, and you're like, if I was helping guide a kid through, their first month of kindergarten or whatever, what do I think would be the most helpful things for them to understand? Like, hey, it's, this is how you can make friends, or, right? Like, what would actually make someone have a good time doing whatever they're doing? So sometimes it's helpful to think about that outside of yourself, because for ourselves we have a lot of expectations, but kind of just think about, if you were really going to draw someone a map of, like, how would they navigate this, and then how can I do that same thing for myself? What would it look like if I was actually an external person looking at my life and saying, out of all the things that you have going on, out of your hopes and your dreams and your goals, how do I draw myself a little preliminary map? And keep in mind that we started this off with calling it a rough draft. There are going to be plenty of opportunities to switch gear, and that again is why day 2 happens, because at some point you need to know if you need to stop doing something rather than continue it. So this is not something that you are going to be forever locked in, or even locked in for the month. It can change, but at least give yourself the opportunity to ask those questions, so that your days are much more clear on what is it that I really need to work on that will make the biggest impact. And then I can get more granular from that area, but at least I have then ensured that as I do the smaller things, they are backing up and supporting the big picture goals that I actually have. All right, so that is it for day 3. I applaud you for doing this work. This day can bring up a lot of resistance in people, because we have our ways of being, and a lot of us have learned to just stay busy. And so I very much remember being like, gosh, I really have to pick the high yield ones. Like, I don't even know what that looks like, right? You get into all the self-doubt and stuff. It gets easier, but if you don't make an attempt, or if you don't try, then you don't get the feedback on how to improve that process in the future. And so sometimes what it takes is us getting so burnt out that we don't have the option anymore not to do that. But having been there, it's super not fun. If I could kind of encourage everyone to do that kind of work before you're forced to do that work, it really does become much easier. And we did it the hard way, but we've worked with thousands of women at this point. So when they come back and tell us, like, that was a lot better, like, I don't know where I was headed, I haven't had the crash yet, but this is felt funny and maybe awkward at first, but now that I'm doing it, I can really see how this will prevent me from going that way. It really reinforces to us, like, yeah, don't wait for that. It's okay if it happens, right? Megan and I don't have guilt and shame about that, but It just wasn't that fun, and it's really not necessary. So I hope that you feel really proud of yourself for doing this kind of work and taking the time to really be intentional and considerate towards yourself and your goals and your dreams. And know that as you do that work, no matter how it feels, we hold the vision for your goals, right? When from the outside, we are rooting for you. We know that anyone who applies themselves and shows up is going to get one way or another at some point, or sooner or later you will get to where you want to be. And so even if you can't see that right now, we can see it for you, and we are just super duper rooting for you. All right, lots of love. Thank you so much for the screenshots and the shares and sharing your takeaways with us. I'm loving them, and it's super motivating for me to keep all of this going. So thank you, and I will talk to you tomorrow.
Thanks for coming out to hang with us on the podcast. It is our goal to transform the way women are treated in healthcare. And we need your help. We need your help to get the word out. We have a lofty goal of 1 million downloads. And we know that as this podcast grows, we're going to be able to reach more women, get more amazing speakers for you, and bring the most cutting-edge information.
If you found these podcasts helpful, please take a moment to text 5 women you know the link to the series. We appreciate your help so much. Can't wait to see you next time.